this week's drive, we see the rain cause aquaplane and pain, find that crashing is common to all forms of motorsport, defy gravity with style, and find an unusual car in an unusual place. All this and more in this week's Drive. We start this week with NASCAR, where the race was delayed for 24 minutes because of rain. Americans don't race in the wet, so Ryan Newman and his pit crew played some gridiron football instead. Because the track was still damp, the race began under a yellow flag, the cars drawing their own racing line.
That means the laps begin to count, and pit road remains.
10 laps into the race, Rusty Wallace tapped Jeff Green just enough to cause Green to spin. Robbie Gordon spun as well, but neither car suffered any damage.
NASCAR really frowns.
On lap 27 of the 300-lap event, Matt Kenseth tucked in and upset the airflow off Jamie McMurray's car, causing McMurray to float off into the outside wall. The most defining moment of the race came when Tony Stewart moved from 4th to 2nd on lap 68 by passing Rusty Wallace on the outside and cutting inside rookie Kyle Busch just a few hundred feet later on. Stewart led for 232 of the 300 laps, and he stayed out front to the checkered flag for the third time in 4 races, passing at will inside and outside in a dominant performance. The win was his 3rd this season, 2nd on this track and 22nd of his career. He beat the Ford of Kurt Busch by 0.8 of a second on the track called the Magic Mile, winning in 3 hours and 5 minutes at 102 miles an hour. It was the 8th top 10 finish in the last 11 races for Stewart, who lies 3rd in the title standings. Up north of the border, a crowd of 78,000, the biggest crowd ever for a champ car race in Canada, watched AJ Allmendinger jump from his maiden pole position to a 1-second lead at the green flag. Paul Tracy, known for his great starts, pulled into 2nd with an early pass on Justin Wilson. But on lap 79, Wilson suddenly spun. He fell all the way down to 8th place before getting back on track to finish 4th. Wilson had won his first Champ Car race a week earlier in Toronto. After leader Sébastien Bourdais pitted on lap 62, Allmendinger led his teammate 19.1 seconds ahead of Bourdais as Tracy faded with brake problems. But a scream of anguish over the radio told the story when Allmendinger slammed into the wall just 8 laps from the end of the race. The 23-year-old American, last year's top Champ Car rookie and one of the most intense drivers in the series, was not injured, but he sat slumped in his car for several minutes before finally sliding out of the protective cocoon of his cockpit. That opened the door for Sébastien Bourdais, and the race came down to Bourdais, Oriol Servia and Tracy. Bourdais, the reigning champion, fought up from a 10th place start after crashing in qualifying to claim his first victory since the season opener in April at Long Beach. Bourdais didn't have the fastest car, but once he had the lead, he was not going to give it up. His lead was just half a second with 2 laps remaining, and it was the 12th win of his career. Sea conditions around the historic port of Plymouth on England's south coast appeared perfect for powerboating in the British Grand Prix, rounds 5 and 6 of the Formula 4-stroke series. Pole sitter Fat Boy, with Rob Lister at the helm and Will Knocker navigating, had a 2-point advantage over the all-female crew of Shelley Jory and Libby Keir aboard Ray Marine. But it was the warm-up crew of Jack Glendinning and Simon Bucknell who gave the leaders the hardest time. Glendinning and Bucknell decided to use their pit lap, a compulsory long lap that each team must use up during a race to try and find some clear water. Ray Marine survived a heart-stopping moment in the closing stages to take 3rd place, but was still conceding ground to the championship rivals. But the pit lap move by the warm-up crew backfired. It was they who found the back markers in their way, and Fat Boy cruised to a comfortable win. Race 2 saw warm-up storm away to open up a huge lead, helped by the Plymouth-based negotiator outfit of Gavin Parsonage and Nathan Libby, who took advantage of a poor start from Fat Boy and occupied 2nd place until the very last lap, preventing Lister and Knocker from getting any closer to the leader. 13 identical 225 horsepower craft take part in the series around UK waters. The championship leaders eventually took second place in leg 2, good enough for top spot on the podium, ahead of Glendinning and Bucknell, with Jory and Keir third. The Fat Boy duo have 69 points after 6 of the season's 10 races, 12 ahead of Ray Marine and 23 in front of warm-up. Next is the Grand Prix of Liverpool. It was a hectic weekend in Plymouth. The day after the Formula 4-stroke races, the big Class 1 offshore powerboats were screaming across the water. Bardecker and Steve Curtis in Spirit of Norway took an early lead. Class 1 is often referred to as the equivalent of Formula 1 motor racing. All boats run petrol engines with the Italian Lamborghini 8.2-litre V12 the preferred power plant. Spirit of Norway won the all-important race to the first corner and came out ahead of their rivals Qatar 96 and Victory 77. But a dramatic high-speed spin at the second corner cost them over 25 seconds, dropping Ecker and Curtis to 6th. The new pairing then produced a remarkable performance. By lap 2 they were up to 5th, and with the leading quartet taking their long laps early, Spirit of Norway were back in front by lap 6. With clear water ahead of them, Ecker and Curtis pulled out all the stops to make up the time lost. On lap 12, they took their long lap, and the tactics to leave it late paid off, coming out in front of Qatar 96 and going on to win by a comfortable 20 seconds. Qatar 96 finished second, with Victory 77 coming home third, ahead of Negotiator 50 in 4th place. For Norwegian Bardecker, it was the end to a perfect weekend on his race debut as the driver of Spirit of Norway, with the win backing up their fastest time in the qualifying session. We stay in England and go to the stately Claydon House for something a little different. When hovercraft racing began in the early 1980s, it was hard to envisage this little-known hobby ever becoming a fully-fledged sport. But the presence of hundreds of drivers and spectators at the third round of the European Hovercraft Championship shows what's taken place over the last 20 years. While the earliest racing hovercrafts lumbered around at a top speed of about 10 miles an hour, today's powerful vessels are capable of topping 80 miles an hour. Races are staged on courses that cover both land and water, and this one proved particularly testing. The weekend's action consisted of races in 7 categories run over 2 days. Top honours in each class would go to the driver with the best combined position over 2 heats. Handling was far from ideal on a course that was covered in small mounds. But the transition from land to water provided the greatest obstacle, and a lack of brakes certainly didn't suit some of the field's driving styles. Germany's Michael Metzner mastered the conditions to take the checkered flag in Saturday's Formula 1 race, though, the top class in the sport. Metzner finished second behind reigning world champion Michele Scanavino of Italy in the second heat, but his combined positions sealed the overall victory. The 5-round season continues in Bremen in Germany.
The course is not a power course where you need a lot of engine power. You need good technique because it's very bumpy, and you have to find the correct way between the bumps that you can drive a good line. I like the course. It's very hard, but I like it.
It's racing, Jim, but not as we know it. There's gridlock on the roads of India. No one's moving anywhere very fast, and exhaust fumes are choking the atmosphere. In an effort to combat pollution, the Indian government is promoting more environmentally friendly technology, like the latest electric car. The Riva NXG is a 2-seater roadster with a top speed of 120 kilometers an hour and a range of 200 kilometers per charge. The government has announced a subsidy of 75,000 rupees, or $1,700 on every Revo car purchased. It was designed with stylish young consumers in mind.
The response that we have got thus far is that it's unbelievably good. I mean, the way the car looks, it arouses that passion to own a car. That's really what I was called upon to do. You know, you must want to own it.
Roxanne Bose bought a Riva car 2 years ago because she was concerned about the effects of India's millions of old and poorly maintained cars on the environment. Since then, she's come to appreciate the convenience of such a compact car, which gives her enormous maneuverability on Delhi's crowded roads. Plus, there are financial rewards.
Economically, it's as cheap as taking a bus. Once you've paid off the actual cost of the car, it's from 200 to 500 rupees a month is how much you actually spend on the car. It's 40 paise per kilometer. There's hardly any maintenance because there's no engine, there's no clutch, there's no gear. There's nothing to be done.
The Riva runs on a rechargeable battery, which costs between $5 and $10 a month to run. All that Roxanne needs to do is connect her Riva to the nearest charge point. Other governments around the world, concerned about air pollution, are also supportive of electric cars. The Japanese government has announced a subsidy of $2,600 per car. The NXG uses sodium nickel chloride batteries feeding a 37 kilowatt motor that drives the front wheels. Over 200 cars like Roxanne's have already been sold in London alone, despite zero advertising. World MotoGP champion Valentino Rossi is well on his way to another title. He's been on the podium in every race this season and went into his adopted home Grand Prix with a 79-point lead over his nearest rival and compatriot, Marco Melandri. His adopted home? Yes, the Italian superstar lives in London. Recent rumours in the press would have him switching to four wheels, Formula One and Ferrari, but Rossi denies he's moving, despite having won all there is to win in the world of Grand Prix motorcycle racing and dominating completely. And he explained why he no longer lives in Italy.
Now I don't know. I won't stay. I won't continue with the MotoGP for sure for next year and after I decide. But anyway, this is my passion, not only my work, and I hope to continue like this for the maximum. My life outside of the track is difficult, and especially in Italy for me is impossible. Go walk outside and have always a lot of fun waiting for me. Is always a work.
According to Forbes magazine, Rossi is the highest-earning sportsman in Italy, although he finds living in the UK much easier.
I like very much, yes, because here in London the situation is a bit different, more quiet. The people don't recognize me a lot, don't recognize me too much, and for me it's more easy.
American Nicky Hayden won the last Grand Prix for Honda, with Rossi's Texan teammate Colin Edwards second ahead of the champion, and he rates both highly.
I think now Nicky and Colin are in a very good shape, because also before Laguna, Colin and Hassan arrived on the podium third, and Nicky arrived fourth, not so far from me and Melandri, and after did make the masterpiece in Laguna, and also always Colin and Nicky are fast in Donington, so maybe now are the toughest rival.
Rossi, only 26, is already a veteran with an eye for young talent.
For me, Melandri is very good, young, so have time for improve. Also, Aiden is not so bad. And after I have some good guy from the 250 like Pedrosa or Dovizioso. Have a lot of young guy.
Motorcycling's governing body announced last month a reduction of the maximum capacity in the top category from 990 cc's to 800 cc's from 2007. Top speeds in MotoGP reach around 340 kilometres an hour, the bikes accelerating as fast as Formula One cars, but with no bodywork to protect the riders. Valentino won the title from 2001 to 2003 with Honda before an acrimonious split had a move to rivals Yamaha, with whom he won the title last year. But he doesn't rule out a return to Honda. Donington is one of Rossi's favourite tracks, a circuit where he took his first 500cc win in 2000 and has been victorious 6 times. But he thinks the Americans will be tough opponents.
Every time is good to the end. And I fight a lot with all different top riders, and this is good because it means we do a great job. I think in Laguna, Nicky and Colin did a great race, and the 2 guys are very fast also in Donington. Also last year he arrived second and fourth, and maybe is another battle also this year.
Dani Pedrosa, another London resident and the 250cc world champion, confirmed that he will battle Rossi in MotoGP next season. He signed a deal to ride in Honda's works team in MotoGP next year. The Spanish teenager, who won the quarter-litre title at his first attempt last season and currently leads the series by 37 points, tested the V5 Honda machine at Valencia last November. At the track and ahead of practice, 3,000 fans poured into an open paddock for a day of festivities that ranged from a pit lane walk to stunt shows, sidecar rides, live music, a circuit ride-in, and the afternoon's main event, the rider memorabilia auction. All the riders, including Colin Edwards and Troy Bayliss, signed hundreds of autographs for their fans.
I tell you what.
Randy Mamela, Jeremy McWilliams and Neil McKenzie showed off their cross-kart skills for the fans, and Shinya Nakano and Troy Bayliss sold off their old racing gear, with proceeds going to the charity Riders for Health. The entire Grand Prix paddock was united, with riders from the MotoGP, 250 and 125 World Championships teaming up with the British public to make their annual contribution to improving medical aid services in Africa. With Marco Melandri and Alex Barros unhurt from their race crashes at Laguna Seca, there were no injury worries, particularly with the 250 and 125 riders having enjoyed an extra 2 weeks rest since their last Grand Prix at Assen. But on race day, the traditional awful English weather made for terrible racing conditions. Rossi suffered a woeful start from his pole position on the grid as Sete Gibernau claimed the lead into Redgate, with Marco Melandri second and Troy Bayliss third, all on Hondas. Rossi dropped to 7th, but by the end of the first lap had hauled himself back up to 4th. Max Biaggi slid off the track at the end of lap 1, and with just 3 full laps completed, Melandri fell and took out Bayliss. Then race leader Gibernau, supposedly a wet weather expert, also came to grief. The leading trio's misfortune promoted Rossi to leader by default, but by half distance he'd slipped to second behind Alex Barros, with Kenny Roberts third and Colin Edwards fourth. John Hopkins put a Suzuki at the front for the first time all year when he passed Rossi as the world champion struggled for grip and traction. Hopkins dropped to 5th and then dropped it altogether as Rossi fought to stay upright. By the time 22 of the 29 laps had been completed, Rossi had reclaimed the lead from Barros after outbraking the Brazilian, and then building a 4.37-second lead with 5 laps to go. Kenny Roberts then passed the battling Brazilian for second place to set the final order. Second place for Roberts represented the first podium for the former world champion and his Suzuki team since Rio in 2002, whilst Honda's Barros was able to celebrate his 250th Grand Prix appearance on the rostrum in third. 12 of the best riders in the world crashed. The win was Rossi's 75th, just 1 less than Mike Hailwood's tally. Giacomo Agostini has the record, 122 Grand Prix wins.
Yes, it was one of the most difficult race of my career. The conditioner was incredible. It's very cold. The track was very slippery, and also have a lot of rain, and it's difficult to see the track.
Rossi's teammate Colin Edwards picked up 4th place to move ahead of Max Biaggi and Sete Gibernau into 3rd in the championship, just 1 point behind Marco Melandri in 2nd. In the 250 class, Frenchman Randy Depunier showed mastery of the wet conditions and some luck to pip his rivals to the win. The Frenchman had to fend off Rainmaster Australian Anthony West, who finished 2nd to give KTM a podium finish on their 250 class debut. Fellow Aussie Casey Stoner completed the podium, missing on the chance to challenge for the win after an off-track excursion with 2 laps to go. Stoner's third place put 2 Australians on the 250cc podium for the first time in history. The win put De Punier ahead of Jorge Lorenzo in the championship, who could manage no better than 8th on the drenched track. The rain forced the 125cc race to be red flagged after just 8 laps, but race leader Alvaro Bautista was able to restart despite crashing on the last lap. Bautista and his teammate Alex Espargaro crashed when they were catching the new leader Mike DiMaglio, allowing KTM rider Julian Simon to claim his maiden Grand Prix win, the Spaniard holding off teammates DiMaglio and Fabrizio Lai. After these results, Passini and Talmaxi continue to maintain the shared championship and general standings, but now with only a 1-point cushion ahead of Luthi. Around 23,000 motorcycle fans made their way into the Las Ventas bullfighting arena in Madrid. But this time there was an entirely different kind of power and mastery on display. Horsepower as opposed to the usual bull kind, as the Red Bull Crossfighters competition came to town. Riders launched off huge ramps set up inside the arena, allowing them to show off some spectacular tricks. Australian rider Robbie Maddo Madison was making his debut in the competition, but as his jump showed, he was far from a novice. Indeed, Madison is the proud owner of 2 world records, with a Superman seat grab of over 246 feet and a jump of over 221 feet on his Honda CR125. American Ronnie Renner matched that with some superhuman soaring of his own and finished with a neat bit of breakdancing. For some light relief, the appropriately named local rider Dani Torres confronted a matador, but the master of the arena, or Lord of the Ring if you like, was Nate Adams. The American only returned to action 4 weeks ago after breaking a bone in his thigh, but you'd never have guessed he spent 8 months out of the saddle as he saw off competition from Matt Rabot of Switzerland and the US's Twitch Stenberg to take the title. The 21-year-old finished second in the event last year, but ensured he would take all the glory this time around as he demonstrated a 360-degree rotation, the only competitor to do so.
I feel great. It's my first contest back from a broken femur, and it was 8 months off, and I had a lot of doubts at that time, and winning my first contest back is just unbelievable. That's exactly how I daydreamed about it, and it went exactly to plan, so can't have asked for anything more.
American motocross riders clearly like the arena in Madrid. Kenny Bartram finished first in 2003, Travis Pastrana took the honours in 2004, and now Nate has bounced back to devastating form. And finally, a classic example of how not to find parking. Brad Sweet from Grass Valley, California went flying over the safety barrier and a wall right into the parking area while trying to qualify for a race at the Tri-State Speedway in Halbstadt, Indiana. Sweet was racing on the quarter-mile dirt track when he went flying off the circuit and luckily avoided crashing into the crowded pit area nearby. Amazingly, the 19-year-old driver got out of his car moments later and was able to walk away unaided. He was treated and released from the hospital with only minor injuries, but I'll bet he was stiff and sore the next day. So, whether you're a veteran racer, keeping a low profile, or just doing what comes naturally, so you stay on track and up to speed, make sure you catch next week's Drive.